Hello my beautiful souls, today I'm sharing a story that explores how fate can bring two people together against all odds. This tale of dangerous love, unexpected consequences, and impossible choices has been living in my heart for months. If you've ever had to choose between protecting your heart and following it, you'll understand Alessa's journey. Settle in with your favorite drink. This one's going to be a roller coaster of emotions that will keep you guessing until the very end. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to face your past when you least expected it. Dawn broke over the small coastal Maine town as Alessa Moretti gently warmed bottles for her 8-month-old twins. Sophia was already awake, dark eyes watching her mother's every move, while Marco still slept peacefully in his crib. "Another day of keeping you safe, my loves," Alessa whispered, testing the milk temperature on her wrist. Her tiny apartment wasn't much, but it was clean, secure, and most importantly, far from Boston. For 18 months, she'd built this quiet life for her babies. New name, new job, cash-only transactions. No social media, no old friends, no connections to her past. No reminders of Dante Castellano. Sophia gurgled happily as Alessa lifted her from the crib. "You have his eyes, you know," she told her daughter softly. "Let's hope that's all you inherited from your father." As she fed Sophia, Alessa's mind drifted to the life she'd left behind. The bustling Italian restaurant in Boston's North End that had been in her family for generations. The apartment above it where she'd grown up. The grave she still couldn't visit, her father, Antonio Moretti, killed in what police called a random robbery 3 years ago. What they wouldn't call it was what it really was. A Mafia hit. "You're looking tired today," Frank commented as Alessa tied her apron at the seaside cafe where she now worked. The older man had given her a job with no questions asked when she'd arrived in town, visibly pregnant and clearly running from something. "The twins are teething," she explained, forcing a smile. "Who needs sleep anyway?" The morning rush kept her busy, mind focused on coffee orders and breakfast plates rather than the constant fear that lived in her chest. Until she approached table 7. The man sat alone by the window, dark hair slicked back, broad shoulders filling out an expensive suit that looked wildly out of place among the fishermen and tourists. He hadn't looked up, hadn't spoken, but something about his profile sent ice through her veins. The coffee pot slipped from her hand, shattering against the floor. The man looked up, startled. Not Dante. Just a businessman with a passing resemblance. "I need a minute," she gasped to Frank, already backing toward the kitchen as memories flooded back. Memories of the man who'd changed her life forever. 18 months earlier. Their first meeting had been all business. Dante Castellano, heir to Boston's most powerful crime family, personally collecting protection payments from her restaurant. "Your father understood how things work in this neighborhood," he'd told her, voice smooth as aged whiskey. "I hope we can continue our arrangement." "My father is dead," she'd snapped back, grief making her reckless. "And I don't need your protection." Instead of anger, she'd seen something like respect flash in his dark eyes. "Everyone needs protection, Miss Moretti." She'd called the police the moment he left. They'd taken statements, done nothing. The next day, her head chef quit without explanation. The day after, her deliveries mysteriously failed to arrive. When Dante returned the following week, she'd been alone, tallying the mounting costs of her defiance. "Ready to be reasonable?" he'd asked, no triumph in his voice. "Why did your family kill him?" she'd demanded instead. Surprise had crossed his face. Genuine, not feigned. The Castellanos had nothing to gain from Antonio Moretti's death. "Your father paid his dues faithfully for 20 years. Then who?" "That's what I've been trying to determine." He'd stepped closer, his cologne teasing her senses. "Someone's moving against my family's interests. Your father might have been collateral damage." She hadn't believed him then, but she'd noticed for the first time how his tailored suit couldn't quite hide the power in his shoulders, how his eyes seemed to see right through her defenses. Their relationship had evolved slowly. His weekly visits became longer, their conversations extending beyond business. He'd ask about the restaurant, offer advice on suppliers. She'd find herself watching the door on days he might appear, heart racing when he did. The night everything changed, she'd been closing alone. 3 men, not Castellanos, had cornered her in the alley. Before they could touch her, 2 had dropped with muffled gunshots. The 3rd had been slammed against the wall, Dante's hand around his throat. "Who sent you?" Dante had demanded. "Bratva," the man had choked out. "Russian orders." After knocking the man unconscious, Dante had turned to her, eyes wild with something primal. "Are you hurt?" She'd shaken her head, adrenaline and fear and something else coursing through her. Without thinking, she'd reached for him. Their first kiss had tasted of danger and salvation. That night in her apartment had changed everything. For those hours, she'd forgotten who he was, who she was, the blood between their families. It became their secret. Heated encounters stolen between his collections, nights where they pretended they were just a man and woman with no past, no future. Until the night she'd overheard him on the phone, voice cold as winter. "The Russian problem needs to be eliminated. No witnesses, no traces." Reality had crashed back. This man she'd allowed into her bed, into her heart, ordered deaths as casually as dinner. She'd fled that night, her pregnancy still unknown even to her. "Alessa, you okay?" Frank's concerned voice pulled her back to the present. "Fine," she managed, splashing water on her face in the employee bathroom. "Just dizzy for a second." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Giuseppe, her father's oldest friend and her only remaining connection to Boston. "Hello," she answered softly. "Alessa." The old man's voice trembled. "He's alive. Dante's alive and he's looking for you." The phone nearly slipped from her hand. Impossible. Dante had been killed in a territory war with the Russian Bratva. She'd seen the newspaper headlines 8 months ago, had finally begun to breathe easier. "Are you certain?" she whispered. "He came to my restaurant yesterday. Asked questions." Giuseppe's voice dropped lower. "He knows about the babies, Alessa." Her blood turned to ice. "How?" "Someone talked. You need to run. Tonight." Darkness had fallen by the time Alessa rushed into her apartment, mind racing with escape plans. The twins were with Mrs. Peterson next door, the kindly widow who watched them during Alessa's shifts. She grabbed the emergency bag she kept packed, then gathered the twins' essentials. As she reached for Marco's favorite blanket, the lights in the apartment suddenly went out. Alessa froze, heart pounding against her ribs. The soft click of the front door latch confirmed her worst fears. "You should have chosen somewhere safer," came a voice from the darkness, a voice that haunted her dreams. "This building's security is laughable." She reached for the kitchen knife hidden beneath the coffee table as a tall figure stepped into a shaft of moonlight from the window. Dante Castellano stood before her, more beautiful and terrifying than her memories. A new scar traced his left cheekbone, and he moved with the slightest limp, but his eyes, those eyes that had once looked at her with passion, now burned with quiet intensity. "You were going to run again," he said, gaze flicking to her packed bag. "Without telling me I have children. How did you find me?" she managed, knife trembling in her grip. "I never stopped looking." He took another step forward. 18 months, Alessa. You've kept my children from me for 18 months. "They're not yours," she lied desperately. "Don't." The word was soft but firm. "I saw them with the neighbor. The boy has my mother's eyes. The girl has my smile." Another step. "Did you think I wouldn't recognize my own blood?" Alessa backed toward the twins' room, knife extended. "Stay away from us." Something flickered across his face. Hurt, quickly masked by determination. "I have rights." "Rights," she hissed. "Men like you don't deserve." The window behind Dante exploded inward, showering glass across the room. He moved with shocking speed, tackling Alessa to the floor as bullets tore through the space where she'd been standing. "Bratva," he growled against her ear, his body shielding hers. "They found you too." "Stay down." Dante ordered, his body still covering Alessa's as bullets splintered the wooden doorframe above them. In one fluid motion, he drew a gun from beneath his jacket. "You're armed," Alessa gasped. "I'm always armed." His voice had changed, harder, colder, as he pressed a small device in his ear. "Perimeter breach. Northeast corner. At least 3 hostiles. I have the package and the treasures." Package. Treasures. Code words for her and the twins. "We need to get the babies," she whispered urgently. Dante nodded once. "When I move, stay behind me. Touch my back so I know where you are." More gunfire erupted outside, but this time it wasn't directed at the apartment. "Return fire. My team's engaging them," Dante explained. "Now." He moved with lethal precision toward the door, Alessa close behind, her fingertips pressed against his back. The hallway was dark and silent as they reached Mrs. Peterson's door. The elderly woman opened it before they could knock, eyes wide with fear. "What's happening?" "No time," Dante said, already scanning the apartment. "Where are the children?" "Bedroom," Mrs. Peterson pointed. "They just fell asleep." Alessa rushed past them both, gathering Marco while Dante lifted Sofia with surprising gentleness. The baby didn't wake, simply nestled against his chest as if she somehow recognized him. "Stay inside, lock your door, and keep away from windows," Dante instructed Mrs. Peterson. "My men will ensure your safety." The old woman nodded, too shocked to question who this commanding stranger might be. Back in the hallway, Dante pressed his finger to his earpiece again. Status. Whatever response he received made his jaw tighten. Exit route. He listened, then turned to Alessa. "We're going down the fire escape. 2 of my men will cover us. The twins will be fine," he finished firmly. "Trust me or we all die here." Those words, "trust me," nearly made her laugh. Trust the man who'd lied about who he was. The man who'd ordered killings over the phone. The man who'd somehow found her after 18 months of hiding. But as another burst of gunfire erupted outside, she realized she had no choice. They moved swiftly down the fire escape, Dante leading with Sofia cradled protectively against him, Alessa following with Marco. At the bottom, 2 men in tactical gear materialized from the shadows, weapons raised. "Clear path to the vehicle, boss," one reported. 30 seconds. Dante nodded. "Stay close," he told Alessa. They sprinted across the small parking lot to where a black SUV idled, engine running. The back door opened automatically as they approached. Dante placed Sofia inside first, then helped Alessa with Marco before climbing in himself. "Go," he commanded, and the vehicle accelerated smoothly into the night. Only when they'd put several miles between them and the apartment did Alessa finally speak. "You led them straight to us," she accused, checking both babies for any signs of distress. Miraculously, they remained asleep. Dante's expression hardened. "They were already watching you. Have been for weeks." "What? How do you know that?" "Because I've been watching you too." His gaze was unapologetic. "My surveillance team spotted theirs 3 days ago. I was planning a more civilized approach, but they forced my hand tonight." The casual admission that he'd been monitoring her sent chills down Alessa's spine. "Where are you taking us?" "Somewhere safe." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Dante's laugh held no humor. "You already are." An hour later, they passed through imposing iron gates that opened automatically at their approach. Beyond stretched a long tree-lined driveway leading to what could only be described as a coastal estate, a massive stone house perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. "Welcome to Castellano North," Dante said as the SUV pulled to a stop. "My family's summer residence." "Prison, you mean," Alessa muttered. "Safe house," he corrected. "No one knows about this property except my most trusted people." Inside, the house was a study in understated luxury. Hardwood floors, tasteful furnishings, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the moonlit ocean. But Alessa noticed other details too. The reinforced doors, the subtle security cameras, the keypads beside each entrance. A fortress disguised as a home. An older woman appeared, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun. "The nursery is prepared, Mr. Castellano." "Thank you, Mrs. Winters." Dante turned to Alessa. "Mrs. Winters will show you to the nursery. The twins will be comfortable there." "I'm not letting them out of my sight," Alessa insisted. "The nursery connects to your suite," he explained patiently. "You'll all be together." Too exhausted to argue further, Alessa followed Mrs. Winters upstairs. The nursery was indeed perfect. 2 cribs, changing table, rocking chair, even a small refrigerator stocked with formula. The adjoining bedroom was equally luxurious, with its own bathroom and a balcony overlooking the ocean. After settling the twins, Alessa returned to find Dante standing in the doorway of the nursery, watching Sophia sleep. Something in his expression, wonder mixed with fierce protectiveness, caught her off guard. "She has your smile," he said softly. "And Marco has my mother's eyes." "How would you know?" Alessa challenged. "You've never seen them before tonight." His gaze shifted to her, hardening. "Because you kept them from me." "I thought you were dead," she admitted. "The papers said that I was killed in a territory war with the Russians." "I know." He unbuttoned his shirt enough to reveal a puckered scar just below his collarbone. "For 6 months, I almost was." Alessa stared at the scar, then at others visible beneath his partially opened shirt. "What happened?" "Assassination attempt. Bullet missed my heart by centimeters." His voice was matter-of-fact. "I spent 6 months in a coma, another 3 in rehabilitation in Switzerland." "I didn't know." "How could you? You were gone." The accusation hung between them. 18 months, Alessa. You've been hiding my children from me for 18 months. "I left before I knew I was pregnant," she defended. "And by the time I found out, I was already establishing a new life. A safe life away from—" She gestured at him. "All of this. Away from me, you mean?" "Yes." The simple admission seemed to hit him harder than she expected. He turned away, composing himself before speaking again. "We have things to discuss, but it can wait until morning. You should rest." He moved to leave, but Alessa stopped him with a question. "Why are the Russians after me?" Dante paused in the doorway. "They believe you have something that belongs to them." "What?" "Information. About shipments, routes, contacts." His expression was unreadable. "Information they think I gave you before my accident." "But you didn't." "No. But they don't know that." He studied her face. "Get some sleep, Alessa. We're safe here for now." As he turned to leave again, Sophia stirred in her crib, eyes blinking open. Dante froze as the baby's gaze found him. For a breathless moment, father and daughter regarded each other. Then, impossibly, Sophia smiled, a toothless, trusting smile that transformed her tiny face. Something in Alessa's chest cracked at the sight. Dante swallowed hard. "Good night," he said roughly, and disappeared down the hallway. Sleep eluded Alessa that night. The bed was too soft, the room too unfamiliar, her mind too full of Dante, the man she'd once given herself to completely, the father of her children, the dangerous criminal who'd killed without remorse. The man who'd taken a bullet to protect her tonight. Around dawn, she gave up on sleep and wandered to the kitchen, where she found Dante already awake, watching a news report on a tablet. "Your apartment building is gone," he said without preamble, turning the screen toward her. The local news showed firefighters battling a blaze that had engulfed the entire structure. "Authorities suspect arson," the reporter was saying. Miraculously, all residents were safely evacuated before the fire spread. "You're doing?" Alessa asked, accepting the coffee he offered. "My men ensured everyone got out safely." He didn't deny responsibility for the fire itself. The Russians were searching for something. This eliminates any evidence and sends a message. "What message?" "That you're under my protection now." Before she could respond, The sound of tires on gravel drew their attention. Dante checked a security monitor, his expression darkening. "My mother," he said, voice tight. "Stay here." But Alessa followed him anyway, hanging back as he greeted the elegant woman stepping from a luxury sedan. Sofia Castellano was in her 60s but looked a decade younger. Her silver-streaked dark hair swept into a perfect chignon, her designer suit impeccable. "Dante," she said, kissing his cheeks. "I came as soon as I heard about the Russians." Her gaze shifted past him to where Alessa stood. "So this is her mother. And where are the children?" Sofia continued, brushing past her son to approach Alessa. "The bastards that have distracted you from family business these past weeks." Alessa stiffened, but before she could respond, Dante stepped between them. "They are Castellanos," he said, voice dangerously soft. "They are under my protection." Something passed between mother and son, a silent battle of wills that Sofia eventually conceded with a tight smile. "Of course they are," she said smoothly. "Family is everything." The conversation moved to business matters that excluded Alessa, so she retreated to check on the twins. When she returned downstairs an hour later, Sofia was leaving. "Take care of my son," the older woman told her, the words more threat than request. "He's been through enough." After Sofia's car disappeared down the driveway, Alessa confronted Dante in his study. "Your family killed my father," she said without preamble. Dante looked up from his laptop, expression unreadable. "No, we didn't. He refused to pay protection money and ended up dead." "That's not a coincidence. Your father paid his dues faithfully for 20 years, Dante said, echoing his words from their first confrontation. "His death benefited no one in my organization." "Then who killed him?" Dante's gaze was steady. "That's what I've been trying to determine since the day we met." 3 days passed in uneasy coexistence at the coastal estate. Alessa settled into a routine with the twins while Dante worked from his study, making calls and receiving reports from his men. They circled each other cautiously, connected by the children but separated by years of mistrust. On the 4th morning, Alessa was feeding the twins in the sunroom when Dante appeared in the doorway, a thick manila folder in his hands. "We need to talk," he said, his expression grave. "About your father." He placed the folder on the table between them. "My investigator just delivered this." Alessa eyed the folder warily. "What is it?" "The truth." Dante sat across from her. "About Antonio Moretti. I know the truth. He was an immigrant who built a successful restaurant business until your family had him killed." Dante shook his head slowly. "That's the story you were told. It's not the whole truth." With trembling fingers, Alessa opened the folder. Inside were photographs, documents, and newspaper clippings dating back to the 1980s. The first photo showed a much younger version of her father standing beside a man who looked remarkably like Dante. "That's my father," Dante confirmed. "Salvatore Castellano. And beside him is Antonio Moretti, before he became Anthony Morris, the respectable restaurant owner you knew." Alessa stared at the image, unable to reconcile this hard-faced young man with the gentle father who'd taught her to make pasta from scratch. "What is this?" "Your father wasn't just an immigrant who built a restaurant," Dante said quietly. "He was Antonio the Ghost Moretti, the Castellano family's most feared enforcer for nearly a decade." The room seemed to tilt around her. "No, that's impossible. Before you were born, he faked his death and changed his identity. He created a new life for himself, and later for you and your mother." "You're lying," she whispered, but even as the words left her mouth, doubts crept in. The way her father had always been hypervigilant. The gun he kept hidden behind the bar. His insistence that she learn self-defense from a young age. "Your father killed 12 men for my family," Dante continued, his voice neutral. "Then disappeared with $2 million of Castellano money." Alessa shook her head violently. "My father was a good man. People are rarely just one thing, Alessa. Dante's eyes held no judgment. He could be both the killer who worked for my family and the loving father who raised you. She flipped through more documents. Police reports, death certificates, newspaper articles about unsolved murders. All connected to her father. If what you're saying is true, she managed, then why did the Castellanos let him live? Why not hunt him down for betraying them? They tried at first. But your father was called the Ghost for a reason. He vanished completely. Dante leaned forward. Until 20 years later, when a new restaurant opened in the North End owned by a man named Anthony Morris. My grandfather's name was Morris, Alessa whispered. My mother's father. A convenient identity to steal, Dante nodded. By then, my grandfather was running the family. He recognized Antonio immediately but kept it to himself. Why? Respect, perhaps. Or maybe he admired the clean break your father had made. Dante shrugged. Whatever the reason, he made a deal instead of ordering a hit. Your father would pay protection money, essentially returning the stolen $2 million over time, and the Castellanos would leave him in peace. Alessa's mind raced, trying to fit this new information into everything she believed about her father. If that's true, then who killed him? If not the Castellanos? That's what I've been trying to discover since we met, Dante said. Someone wanted him dead, but it wasn't my family. We had more to gain from him alive. Before Alessa could respond, Sophia began fussing in her high chair. As she turned to comfort her daughter, she noticed Marco slumped in his seat, unusually quiet. Marco, she called, suddenly alarmed. When she touched his forehead, heat radiated from his skin. He's burning up. Dante was beside her instantly, his hand replacing hers on the baby's forehead. Get him out of the chair. As Alessa lifted Marco, she noticed small purple bruises on his arms that hadn't been there during his morning bath. Dante, look. His expression changed from concern to alarm. We need to get him to a doctor. Now. The private hospital was an hour away, but Dante's driver made it in 40 minutes. Marco's condition had deteriorated rapidly. His fever spiking, more bruises appearing on his tiny body. By the time they rushed through the hospital's private entrance, he was listless and pale. A team was waiting for them, led by a serious-looking woman in her 50s. I'm Dr. Chen, she said, already examining Marco. Dante briefed me on the symptoms. We need to run tests immediately. The next hours passed in a blur of blood draws, examinations, and tense waiting. Alessa refused to leave Marco's side, while Dante arranged for Sophia to be cared for by Mrs. Winters at the estate, with 4 security guards for protection. When Dr. Chen finally returned with results, her expression confirmed Alessa's worst fears. It's a form of infant acute myeloid leukemia, she explained gently. Rare, but treatable with prompt intervention. Leukemia. Alessa repeated the word like a physical blow. He's only 8 months old. Unfortunately, it can occur at any age. Dr. Chen's voice was compassionate but direct. We need to begin treatment immediately, but there's a complication. Marco's specific genetic markers make finding compatible blood products difficult. What does he need? Dante asked, his voice steady despite the tension visible in his jaw. Eventually, a bone marrow transplant. For now, we'll start chemotherapy, but we should begin testing potential donors immediately. She looked between them. Parents are often the best match. Test us both, Dante said without hesitation. As Dr. Chen left to arrange the tests, Alessa found herself alone with Dante beside Marco's hospital crib. The baby had finally fallen asleep, and 4 delivering fluids and medication to his tiny arm. He's going to be okay, Dante said, though whether he was reassuring her or himself wasn't clear. Alessa nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Without thinking, she reached for Dante's hand. He squeezed back, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever their past, whatever truths had been hidden, they would face this together for their son. While Dante underwent testing, Alessa stepped outside Marco's room to call and check on Sofia. As she ended the call, a man in a well-cut suit approached her. "Ms. Moretti?" he asked quietly. "I'm Agent Carter, FBI." Alessa tensed. "How do you know my name?" He showed her his credentials. "We've been monitoring Dante Castellano's activities for some time. When he suddenly relocated to Maine and established a secure compound, we became very interested. I have nothing to say to you." "I think you do." Carter's voice remained low. "Especially when it concerns the safety of your children." That got her attention. "What about my children?" "Dante Castellano is using you and those babies as his cover while he eliminates competition," Carter said bluntly. "He's been working with us to take down rival organizations, but not out of any sense of justice. He's consolidating power." "You're saying he's an informant?" "Of a sort. He provides information that helps us dismantle other criminal enterprises while protecting his own interests." Carter handed her a card. "We can offer you and your children witness protection in exchange for testimony against the Castellanos." "Testimony about what?" "I don't know anything about their operations." "You know about Antonio Moretti? About his connection to the family?" Carter's eyes narrowed. "And I suspect you know more than you're admitting." Before Alessa could respond, she spotted Dante returning down the hallway. "I have to go." "Think about it," Carter said, stepping back. "Those children deserve a life free from all this." He walked away just as Dante reached her. "Who was that?" Dante asked, eyes tracking the departing agent. "No one," Alessa lied. "Just another doctor." Dante's expression said he didn't believe her, but he didn't press. "Dr. Chen is processing my samples now. We should know soon if I'm a match." Back in Marco's room, Alessa watched Dante gently stroke their son's hair, his face a mask of concern and love. Could this man, this tender father, really be using his own children as cover for criminal activities? Or was Agent Carter manipulating her? She didn't know who to trust anymore. That night, while Marco slept under the watchful eyes of nurses, Dante insisted Alessa get some rest in the adjoining family room. As she settled onto the pull-out couch, her mind raced with everything she'd learned. About her father, about Dante, about the FBI's interest in them both. When Dante joined her, bringing coffee and sandwiches from the cafeteria, she made a decision. "There's something I need to tell you," she said quietly. He sat beside her, waiting. "After my father died, I found a hidden safe in his office." She met Dante's gaze steadily. Inside were documents, financial records, photographs, recordings, all related to the Castellano family. Evidence of criminal activities going back decades. Dante's expression remained neutral. "And what did you do with this evidence?" "I kept it, studied it, added to it with my own research." She took a deep breath. "My plan was to become a prosecutor and eventually bring down the people responsible for my father's death." "The Castellanos," Dante supplied. "Yes, but if what you've told me about my father is true..." She trailed off, uncertain. "The evidence," Dante said after a moment. "I want to see it. It's hidden, safe. From the Russians. Or from me. Both." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Smart." He leaned back, considering her. "My father didn't order your father's hit, Alessa. I'm certain of that now. Someone else in the family did." "Who?" "I have suspicions." His eyes met hers. "The same person who arranged for me to be shot 9 months ago." Understanding dawned slowly. "You think the same person is behind both attacks?" "I think we've both been manipulated by someone who wants to control the Castellano empire." Dante's voice hardened. "Someone who saw your father as a threat because he knew too much. Someone who saw me as a threat because I wanted to legitimize our businesses." "Your mother," Alessa whispered, remembering Sofia's cold assessment of her and the twins. Dante didn't confirm or deny, But his silence was answer enough. "We need your evidence," he said finally. "Combined with what I've gathered since my recovery, it might be enough to prove who's really been pulling the strings." As they sat in the quiet hospital room, their sleeping son between them, Alessa realized they had become unlikely allies in a battle neither had anticipated. Whatever lay between them, attraction, betrayal, mistrust, was now secondary to uncovering the truth and protecting their children. "I'll help you," she decided. "But not for you or your family. For Marco and Sofia." Dante nodded once. "For our children." 3 days into Marco's treatment, the hospital room had become their world. The baby responded well to the initial medications, his fever subsiding though the bruising remained. Alessa barely left his side, while Dante divided his time between Marco's room and making arrangements for their safety. On the 4th morning, Alessa was dozing in the chair beside Marco's crib when the door opened. Instantly alert, she relaxed slightly when Dante entered, but tensed again at the sight of the stranger behind him. "It's okay," Dante said, noting her reaction. "This is my cousin, Marco Castellano." The man stepped forward, tall and lean with the same dark eyes as Dante, though his features were sharper, his expression more guarded. He glanced at the sleeping baby, then back at Alessa. "So this is who I'm named after," he said softly. Alessa stiffened. "I didn't name him after anyone in your family." "Didn't you?" Marco's smile was knowing. "Interesting coincidence, then." She looked away, unwilling to admit that during her pregnancy, thoughts of Dante had haunted her, that she'd chosen the name partly because it reminded her of him. "Marco has information we need to hear," Dante said, closing the door and checking that the baby was still asleep. "Information about what?" "About who's really been running the Castellano family." Marco leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And about who killed your father." Alessa's gaze darted between the cousins. "You know who killed my father." "I suspected," Marco corrected. "Now I have proof." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then handed it to Alessa. On it was a photograph of an elegant restaurant interior. In the foreground, 2 people sat at a corner table deep in conversation. Sofia Castellano and a man Alessa recognized as one of her father's regular customers in the weeks before his death. "That's Viktor Petrov," she said. "He came to the restaurant almost every day for a month before my father was killed." "He's also one of the Bratva's top assassins," Marco supplied. This photo was taken 3 days before Antonio Moretti's murder. Alessa's hands trembled as she handed the phone back. "You're saying Dante's mother ordered my father's death?" "I'm saying Sofia has been playing a long game to take control of everything," Marco said grimly. Antonio Moretti knew too much about the family's past, secrets that could destroy Sofia if revealed. "What secrets?" Alessa demanded. The cousins exchanged a look before Dante answered. "My father wasn't the only one with connections to the Bratva. My mother's family had ties to them going back generations. She's been working both sides for decades. She ordered the hit on your father too," Marco told Dante. "I have recordings of her phone calls with the Russians the day before your shooting." Dante's expression hardened, but he didn't seem surprised. "I suspected as much. I was making too many changes, moving too many operations legitimate. It threatened her power base." "And now she knows about the twins," Alessa said, fear clutching at her heart as she looked at her sleeping son. "Which is why we need to move quickly," Marco agreed. "She won't hesitate to use them as leverage, or worse." The gravity of the situation settled over them like a physical weight. Alessa had fled Boston to protect her children from the Castellano family, only to discover the threat was more specific and more deadly than she'd imagined. "Why are you helping us?" she asked Marco suddenly. "You're a Castellano too." "I've been working against Sofia for years," he replied, his voice tight with old anger. "After she arranged my father's accident when I was 16, I swore I'd bring her down someday." "Your father?" Alessa looked to Dante for explanation. My uncle Lorenzo, Dante supplied. Sofia's brother-in-law. He discovered her Russian connections and threatened to expose her to my father. 2 weeks later, his brake lines mysteriously failed on a mountain road. Marco finished, his voice flat. I've been gathering evidence against her ever since. Before Alessa could respond, Dr. Chen entered with a tablet in hand, her expression cautiously optimistic. I have good news, she announced. We've found a perfect bone marrow match for Marco. Alessa's heart leapt. Who? Dr. Chen looked at Dante. Ooh. You're a perfect match, which isn't surprising given you're his father, but the compatibility is exceptional. Better than we usually see, even between parent and child. Relief washed over Alessa, followed immediately by a new worry. What happens now? We'll schedule the transplant as soon as Marco is stable enough, Dr. Chen explained. First, we'll need to harvest bone marrow from Dante, which requires anesthesia and a brief hospital stay. Then we'll prepare Marco with a conditioning regimen before the transplant itself. After the doctor left, silence fell over the room. The transplant offered hope for Marco's recovery, but it would also leave Dante physically vulnerable at a time when they faced threats from multiple directions. We should postpone, Dante said finally, until we've dealt with my mother. No. Alessa's response was immediate and firm. Marco needs this transplant. We're not delaying his treatment. Sofia will see this as an opportunity, Marco warned. Dante hospitalized, sedated. It's the perfect time to strike. Then we'll be ready, Alessa insisted. But our son comes first. Dante studied her face, then nodded once. You're right. We'll proceed with the transplant and increase security. Marco, I need you to coordinate with my team. His cousin nodded. I'll handle it. But there's something else you should know. He hesitated, glancing at Alessa. The FBI agent who's been meeting with you, Carter. He's compromised. Alessa's blood ran cold. What do you mean? One of my sources spotted him meeting with Sofia at her lake house yesterday, Marco explained. And my tech guy found financial transfers from a known Bratva account to an offshore holding in Carter's name. He's been playing both sides, Dante concluded, his expression darkening. Using FBI resources to track us while feeding information to my mother and the Russians. He approached me at the hospital, Alessa admitted. Offered witness protection in exchange for testimony against your family. Said you were using me and the twins as cover while you eliminated competition. Dante's jaw tightened. When was this? 3 days ago. While you were being tested as a donor. She met his gaze steadily. I didn't tell you because I didn't know who to trust. And now? The question hung between them, weighted with everything unspoken. Their past, their present circumstances, the future of their children. Now I know Carter can't be trusted, she said carefully. Beyond that, I'm still deciding. A ghost of a smile touched Dante's lips. Fair enough. The transplant was scheduled for the following week. As the day approached, security around the hospital tightened, with Marco personally vetting every staff member who would have access to either Dante or baby Marco. The night before the procedure, Alessa returned to the estate to check on Sofia and gather fresh clothes. She found the baby contentedly playing with Mrs. Winters, seemingly unaffected by her parents' absence. She's a happy little soul, Mrs. Winters observed. Takes after her father that way. Alessa raised an eyebrow. Dante. Happy. The older woman chuckled. You didn't know him before. As a boy, he was always laughing, always finding joy in small things. Her expression sobered. Until his father started grooming him to take over the family business. The image of a laughing, carefree Dante was difficult to reconcile with the controlled, dangerous man she knew. Yet she'd seen glimpses of that other self in how he was with the twins. Gentle, playful. His eyes softening when they smiled at him. As she packed an overnight bag, Alessa's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hospital compromised. Carter setting trap. Don't let Dee go through with procedure tomorrow. Her heart racing, she tried calling Dante but got no answer. She was about to call Marco when headlights swept across the driveway. Moments later, Dante himself walked through the door. "You're supposed to be at the hospital," she said, rushing to meet him. "Change of plans." His expression was grim. "One of my security team overheard nurses discussing an FBI raid scheduled for tomorrow morning. Time to coincide with my procedure when I'd be under anesthesia. I just got a warning text saying the same thing." Alessa showed him her phone. "Carter's setting a trap." Dante nodded. Marco confirmed it. "Carter's been feeding information to both my mother and the Russians. The raid tomorrow is cover for something else. An assassination attempt. Most likely. With me sedated and security distracted by FBI agents, it would be the perfect opportunity." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "But we can't delay Marco's treatment much longer. So what do we do?" Dante's eyes met hers, determination replacing frustration. "We turn the trap against them. Use it to draw out all our enemies at once." Over the next hours, Dante, Alessa, and Marco, who joined them via secure video call, devised a plan. They would proceed with the transplant as scheduled, but with critical changes known only to them and their most trusted allies. "We'll use your evidence combined with what Marco and I have gathered," Dante explained. "Enough to bring down Sofia, Carter, and the Bratva connection all at once." "It's risky," Marco warned. "If anything goes wrong." "It won't," Dante cut him off. "Not if we're all clear on our roles." The plan required perfect timing and absolute trust between them, something Alessa wasn't sure she was ready to give. But as they finalized the details, she realized she had no choice. For her children's sake, she had to believe Dante was truly on their side. As midnight approached, Marco ended the call to make final arrangements, and Mrs. Winters retired with Sofia safely tucked in her nursery. Alessa found herself alone with Dante for the first time in days. "You should get some rest," he said, his voice softening. "Tomorrow will be challenging." "I don't think I could sleep," she admitted. He studied her face for a long moment. "You're still not sure you can trust me. Can you blame me?" "No." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "But I need you to know something, Alessa. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever you may think of me or my family, everything I've done since finding you has been to protect you and our children." The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache with conflicting emotions. "I want to believe that." "Then believe this." His hand gently cupped her cheek. "I never stopped looking for you. Not because you took something from me, but because you took my heart when you left." The confession hung between them, unexpected and raw. Alessa searched his face for deception but found only vulnerability, a side of Dante Castellano few had ever seen. Without conscious thought, she leaned into his touch. His arms encircled her, and she felt herself surrender to the embrace, to the familiar scent and strength of him. Their lips met in a kiss that spoke of all they'd lost and found, of dangers faced and still to come. That night, they came together with the desperate intensity of people who knew tomorrow might change everything. No promises were made, no future discussed. Just the present moment, a reconnection that both acknowledged might be their last. As dawn approached, Alessa lay awake watching Dante sleep, wondering if she'd made the right choice in trusting him with both her heart and their son's life. Only time would tell if the dangerous alliance they'd formed would save their family, or destroy it completely. The Castellano estate outside Boston stood like a fortress against the gathering dusk. Stone walls, wrought iron gates, and discreet security cameras that tracked every approach. Inside the grand library, tension crackled like static electricity as Dante stood before the assembled power players, his expression betraying nothing of the plan set in motion. Sofia Castellano sat regally in a high-backed chair, silver hair perfectly coiffed, diamonds glinting at her throat. To her right, Agent Carter maintained his FBI facade, though his eyes darted occasionally to the 3 Russian representatives seated across from him. Family captains lined the walls, their loyalty to Sofia unquestioned, or so she believed. "Thank you all for coming," Dante began, his voice carrying the authority of a man born to command. "Recent events have made it clear that changes are necessary for our family's continued prosperity." Sofia's lips curved in a satisfied smile. She thought this meeting was her son's capitulation, his return to the fold after his rebellious phase. After all, she'd orchestrated everything perfectly. The threat to his children, the pressure from law enforcement, the Russians demanding retribution. All paths had led to this moment, where Dante would finally bend to her will. "The situation with Alessa Moretti and her children has been complicated," Dante continued, pacing slowly before the assembled group. "But I've come to a decision that will benefit us all." "And what decision is that?" Sofia asked, her voice honey over steel. Dante paused, meeting his mother's gaze directly. "Alessa Moretti will no longer be a problem." A ripple of reaction moved through the room. Agent Carter leaned forward slightly. The Russians exchanged glances. "She had evidence that could damage our operations," Dante explained. "Evidence inherited from her father. But that evidence has been secured." "And the woman herself?" one of the Russians asked, his accent thick. "As I said," Dante replied coldly, "she won't be a problem anymore." Sofia's smile widened. "And the children?" "My children," Dante corrected, "will be raised as Castellanos, under my supervision." "A wise decision," Sofia nodded approvingly. "Family is everything." "Yes," Dante agreed, his gaze sweeping the room. "Family is everything. Which is why betrayal within the family is unforgivable." The atmosphere shifted subtly, tension ratcheting higher. "What betrayal?" Sofia asked, her smile faltering slightly. "The kind that gets family members killed," Dante replied. "The kind that involves secret alliances with enemies. The kind that orders hits on one's own son." Before Sofia could respond, the library doors opened. Alessa walked in, her head high, her gaze steady as she took her place beside Dante. Sofia's face drained of color. "What is this?" "This," Dante said, "is the truth finally coming to light." He nodded to Marco, who stepped forward with a laptop. With a few keystrokes, audio filled the room. Sofia's voice, clear and unmistakable, ordering the hit on Antonio Moretti. Then another recording. Sofia negotiating with the Russians for Dante's assassination. "You've been playing both sides for decades," Dante told his mother, whose shock had transformed to cold fury. "Using the Bratva to eliminate anyone who threatened your control, including my father's most loyal men." "Including me." "You have no proof," Sofia hissed. "We have everything," Alessa countered, speaking for the first time. "My father kept records of every transaction, every meeting, every secret he discovered about your Russian connections. He was gathering evidence against you when you had him killed." The Russians had gone very still, their expressions darkening as the recordings continued. Sofia promising them territory, then making identical promises to rival organizations. "You betrayed everyone in this room," Dante concluded. "And now you'll answer for it." Agent Carter stood abruptly. "As a representative of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I'm placing Sofia Castellano under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering." "Sit down, Carter," interrupted the eldest Russian, Petrov. "You have no authority here." Carter's hand moved toward his jacket. "I have full authority." "From whom?" Petrov smiled coldly. "The FBI that knows nothing of your private arrangements. Or from Sofia, who paid you to eliminate her problems." The room froze in a tableau of revealed betrayals. Then everything happened at once. Carter drew his weapon, shouting into his wrist microphone for backup. The Russians reached inside their jackets. Sofia's loyal captains moved to protect her. The first shot came from somewhere to Alessa's left. Then the library erupted in gunfire. Dante tackled Alessa to the floor, covering her body with his as bullets splintered wood and shattered glass around them. Marco had taken position behind a heavy desk, returning fire with precision. "Stay down," Dante ordered, drawing his own weapon. Through the chaos, Alessa saw Agent Carter fall, blood blooming across his chest. 2 of the Russians were down. Family captains exchanged fire with FBI agents who had stormed the room. And Sofia was gone. "She's heading for the twins," Alessa gasped, panic seizing her heart. Dante's eyes widened in understanding. The safe house location was supposed to be known only to them and Marco, but if Sofia had compromised Carter, she might have access to that information too. "We need to move," he said, pulling her toward a concealed door behind a bookcase. "Marco," he called across the room. "She's running." Marco nodded once, continuing to provide covering fire as Dante and Alessa slipped through the hidden passage. The tunnel led to a garage housing several vehicles. Dante selected a nondescript black sedan with tinted windows. "Get in," he ordered, already starting the engine. They emerged from the estate through a service entrance, avoiding the chaos at the main gates where FBI vehicles had created a blockade. Dante drove with controlled urgency, weaving through Boston traffic with the skill of someone intimately familiar with the city's rhythms. "Call Mrs. Winters," he instructed Alessa. "Warn her." Alessa's trembling fingers dialed the number, but it went straight to voicemail. No answer. Dante's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Try the security team." She did, with the same result. Nothing. "She's jammed communications," Dante concluded grimly, accelerating through a yellow light. "How much of a head start does she have?" 5 minutes. Maybe less. It was enough. They both knew it. The safe house was a modest colonial in a quiet suburb, deliberately unremarkable. As they screeched to a halt in the driveway, Alessa's heart sank. The front door stood slightly ajar. "Stay behind me," Dante whispered, drawing his gun as they approached. Inside, they found the first security guard slumped in the hallway, a small dart protruding from his neck. Alive but unconscious. The second guard lay similarly incapacitated in the living room. "Mrs. Winters," Alessa called softly. A muffled sound from the kitchen drew their attention. They found the housekeeper bound to a chair, tape across her mouth, eyes wide with fear and apology. "Where are the twins?" Dante asked after removing the tape. "Upstairs," Mrs. Winters gasped. "She took Sofia. Said if I made a sound, she'd come back for Marco too." Dante was already moving toward the stairs, Alessa close behind. They paused at the nursery door, hearing Sofia's voice from within. Soft, almost gentle. "Such a beautiful child," she was saying. "A true Castellano. You'll understand someday why I had to do this. Family legacy must be protected, no matter the cost." Dante pushed the door open slowly. Sofia stood by the window, baby Sofia cradled in one arm. In her other hand, a pistol gleamed in the fading daylight. "Mother," Dante said quietly, "put my daughter down." Sofia turned, her expression eerily calm. "Dante, I was wondering how long it would take you to get here." Her gaze shifted to Alessa. "And you brought her. How predictable." "This is over," Dante said. His gun trained on his mother even as his eyes tracked Sofia's every movement. "The FBI has the evidence. The Russians know you betrayed them. There's nowhere to run." "There's always somewhere to run," Sofia replied. "I've prepared for contingencies all my life. Did you think I wouldn't have an escape plan?" "Whatever you're planning, it doesn't include my daughter," Alessa said, her voice steadier than she felt. Sofia's laugh was brittle. "Your daughter. This child is a Castellano. My grandchild. My legacy." Her eyes hardened as she looked at Dante. "You chose this woman over your own mother, over everything I built for you." "You built nothing," Dante countered. "You destroyed. You manipulated. You killed anyone who stood in your way, including my father." Something flickered in Sofia's eyes, a moment of genuine emotion breaking through her composed facade. Your father was weak. He would have surrendered everything to the feds, turned legitimate. She spat the word like a curse. I saved this family by trying to kill your own son. You were becoming him, Sophia said, a hint of desperation entering her voice. Making the same mistakes, wanting to go legitimate, falling for a woman who would destroy everything. Her gaze shifted to Alessa. Just like Antonio Moretti's daughter. History repeating itself. Alessa's mind raced to process this new information. What are you saying? Your father and Salvatore Castellano were more than boss and enforcer, Sophia said bitterly. They were planning to dismantle the entire operation, turn state's evidence. All because Salvatore fell in love with your mother. My mother, Alessa whispered. Elena Ricci, the beautiful prosecutor who was building a case against the Castellanos. Sophia's laugh was hollow. History does repeat. Salvatore chose love over family. And now my son makes the same mistake. As she spoke, Sophia's gun hand shifted slightly, the barrel now pointing toward Alessa. It ends now, Sophia said, her voice suddenly cold. No more distractions. No more betrayals. Mother, don't. Dante began. Sophia's finger tightened on the trigger. In the split second before she fired, Dante lunged forward, placing himself between the gun and Alessa. The shot echoed in the small room. Sophia wailed at the sound. Dante staggered, red blooming across his chest. No! Alessa screamed, catching him as he fell. Sophia stood frozen, the gun still extended, shock replacing calculation on her face. Dante! The nursery door burst open as Marco rushed in. His own weapon trained on his aunt. Drop it, Sophia. Now. For a moment, it seemed Sophia might turn the gun on herself, or on the baby still clutched in her arm. Then, with a strange calm, she placed Sophia gently in the crib and let the gun clatter to the floor. It was always going to end this way, she said softly as Marco secured her hands behind her back. Alessa barely heard them, her attention focused entirely on Dante, whose blood was seeping through her fingers as she pressed against his wound. Stay with me, she begged, tears blurring her vision. Please, Dante. Twins need you. I need you. His eyes, clouded with pain, found hers. Take care of our children, he whispered. Tell them I chose love, not power. Tell them yourself, she insisted. You're going to be fine. Help is coming. But his eyes were drifting closed, his breathing becoming shallow. Dante, please, she sobbed. I love you. I never stopped loving you. Whether he heard her, she couldn't tell. His eyes closed completely as sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer with each passing second. Marco was suddenly beside her, his own hands replacing hers on Dante's wound. Ambulance is 2 minutes out, he said tersely. He's strong. He'll make it. Alessa nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. As she rose to check on the twins, both now crying from the commotion, she caught Sophia's gaze. The older woman watched her son's blood pool on the nursery floor, her expression unreadable. You've lost everything, Alessa told her, gathering both babies close. Have I? Sophia asked, a strange smile playing at her lips. Or have I ensured the Castellano legacy continues exactly as it should? Before Alessa could respond, paramedics rushed in, pushing her aside to work on Dante. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, his face pale beneath an oxygen mask, Alessa felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. This wasn't over. Not yet. The hospital waiting room became Alessa's world for 3 days. She moved only between there and the pediatric ward where baby Marco continued his treatments, the twins' schedule now revolving around their father's fight for life. Sophia and Marco slept in a portable crib beside her chair, innocent to the drama unfolding around them. Nurses brought formula and clean diapers. Hospital staff whispered about the security guards stationed at every entrance. On the third night, Marco Castellano appeared, Exhaustion etched in the lines of his face. "Any change?" he asked, dropping into the chair beside her. Alessa shook her head. "Still in critical condition. The bullet missed his heart but damaged his lung." She studied Marco's face. "What's happening out there?" "Sofia and Carter are in federal custody. The Russians have retreated to lick their wounds." He rubbed his eyes. "The family's in chaos, but the loyal captains are following my lead for now. And the FBI, the legitimate FBI, not Carter's corrupt team, is sorting through everything. The evidence you and Dante gathered is substantial." He glanced at the sleeping twins. "They'll have questions for you eventually, but I've bought you some time." Before Alessa could respond, the surgeon appeared in the doorway. They both stood, hearts pounding. "He's stabilized," the doctor said, removing his surgical cap. "The next 24 hours are critical, but if he makes it through the night, his chances improve significantly." Relief made Alessa's knees buckle. Marco caught her elbow, steadying her. "When can I see him?" she asked. "He's in recovery now. Once he's moved to ICU, you can have 5 minutes." The doctor hesitated. "There's something else. About the bone marrow donation for your son." Alessa tensed. "What about it?" "Dante can still be the donor, but we need to wait until he's stronger. At least 6 to 8 weeks. Baby Marco doesn't have that kind of time," she protested. "Actually, he does," the doctor assured her. "The current treatment is working well enough to buy us that time. It's not ideal, but it's our best option." After the doctor left, Marco squeezed her shoulder. "Get some rest. I'll watch the twins." Too exhausted to argue, Alessa made her way to Dante's room in the ICU. He lay still and pale, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped steadily. His chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, the ventilator breathing for him. She took his hand, careful of the 4-line. "You don't get to die on us," she whispered fiercely. "Not now. Not after everything." A nurse appeared with Dante's personal effects in a clear plastic bag. These were with him when he was brought in. Alessa accepted the bag, wallet, keys, phone, watch, and set it aside. Later, searching for his phone charger, she noticed something unusual. A small flash drive attached to his keychain, disguised as a luxury car logo. Curiosity and concern warred within her. This was an invasion of privacy, but after everything they'd been through, did privacy still matter? If there was something on that drive that could help protect their children. Back in the waiting room, she borrowed Marco's laptop and inserted the drive. It contained 3 folders: evidence, legitimate holdings, and for Alessa. The first held meticulously organized files on every criminal organization in Boston, including the Castellanos. Names, dates, transactions, recordings. Enough to dismantle entire empires. The second contained documentation of Dante's legitimate businesses: restaurants, real estate, tech investments, and a trust fund established for the twins. With trembling fingers, she opened the third folder. Inside was a single video file dated 3 months earlier. Dante's face filled the screen, his expression solemn. "Alessa," he began, "if you're watching this, I didn't survive. I've made arrangements for you and the twins. Everything you need is in these files. The trust fund will ensure they want for nothing. My cousin Marco will provide protection if you need it, but you're free to take the children and disappear. Start fresh somewhere without the Castellano shadow." He paused, running a hand through his hair, that rare gesture of vulnerability she'd come to recognize. "I want you to know that finding you and our children gave me purpose beyond the family business. I was already working to legitimize our operations before we met, but after you left, it became my mission to create something I wouldn't be ashamed for my children to inherit." His eyes, so like Sophia's, seemed to look directly into hers. "Give our children a better legacy than mine, Alessa. Tell them their father tried to break the cycle. Tell them I loved them, even before I knew them." The video ended, leaving Alessa staring at a blank screen, tears streaming down her face. 6 months passed in a blur of hospital rooms, rehabilitation sessions, and sleepless nights. Baby Marco underwent his transplant once Dante was strong enough to donate, the procedure successful beyond the doctor's expectations. The leukemia went into remission, his tiny body growing stronger each day. They settled temporarily in a beachside property in Rhode Island, neutral territory, away from Boston's complications but close enough for Dante's ongoing medical treatments. Alessa enrolled in online law courses, determined to finish the education she'd abandoned when she fled Boston. Their relationship existed in a fragile middle ground, bound by their children and shared trauma, separated by years of mistrust and secrets. They moved around each other carefully, co-parents but not quite partners, their attraction undeniable but complicated by everything that had come before. Dante focused on his recovery with the same intensity he'd once applied to running his empire. Physical therapy, breathing exercises, rebuilding his strength hour by painful hour. The man who emerged from this crucible was different, quieter, more reflective. His priorities irrevocably shifted. One morning in early spring, a courier delivered a package addressed to both of them. Inside was a weathered leather journal, its pages filled with Antonio Moretti's distinctive handwriting. "Where did this come from?" Alessa asked, turning the journal over in her hands. "Giuseppe," Dante replied, reading the enclosed note. "Your father's friend. Apparently, Antonio left this with him with instructions to deliver it if certain conditions were met." They sat on the deck overlooking the ocean, the twins napping inside, and began to read. What they discovered shook the foundations of everything they believed. Antonio Moretti and Salvatore Castellano were half-brothers, sharing a father but born to different mothers. Neither had known until they were adults, the secret kept by the previous generation to avoid scandal. "We're related," Alessa whispered, the implications dawning slowly. "Distant cousins," Dante confirmed, his expression unreadable. "Our grandfathers were the same man." But that wasn't the most shocking revelation. Antonio had been working with the FBI for years before his death, not as an informant but as an unofficial consultant, helping them understand the inner workings of organized crime families. The final entries detailed his growing suspicion of Sofia's Russian connections and her involvement in multiple family deaths. His last entry, dated just days before his murder, contained a passage that left them both stunned. "I've arranged for Dante to handle the collections at the restaurant himself. He's different from the others. I see his father in him, the man Salvatore was before power corrupted him. If my suspicions about Sofia are correct, I won't live to see this through. But perhaps Dante and my Alessa will meet. Perhaps the children of enemies can become allies and break the chains that have bound our families for generations." "He planned for us to meet," Alessa said softly. "All along. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself," Dante replied, equally quiet. They sat in silence, absorbing the weight of this new truth. Their beginning hadn't been chance but design, Antonio Moretti's final gambit to end the cycle of violence that had claimed so many lives. As summer faded into autumn, the twins celebrated their first birthday. Both healthy, both thriving, they had become the center of a new kind of family, unconventional but fiercely protective. On a golden October evening, Dante found Alessa on the beach, watching the sunset. He sat beside her, his movements still careful but no longer pained. "I've been thinking about the future," he said after a comfortable silence. "What about it?" "You have options, Alessa. The trust fund for the twins is secure. My legitimate businesses are thriving without my direct involvement. You could take the children and start fresh somewhere else." He met her gaze steadily. "I would understand. Are you asking me to leave? I'm offering you freedom. No obligations. No Castellano complications." His voice softened. "Our beginning was built on lies and manipulation, even if it was your father's well-intentioned plan. That doesn't have to define our future, But I won't hold you to a relationship founded on such shaky ground. Alessa studied his face, the face she'd first hated, then desired, then feared, then missed with an ache that never quite subsided. And what do you want? She asked. I want you to choose freely. Not because of the twins, not because of our family's history, not because I took a bullet for you. His smile was tinged with sadness. Though I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Before she could respond, a commotion from the house drew their attention. Mrs. Winters stood on the deck, waving excitedly. Come quickly, she called. The babies. They rushed inside to find Marco and Sophia pulling themselves up on the coffee table, wobbly legs straightening with determination. As they watched, breathless, Sophia took one tentative step, then another, her tiny arms outstretched for balance. Marco followed, equally determined. His face scrunched in concentration. One step. 3. The twins toddled toward their parents, who knelt on either side of the room, creating a bridge between them. When Sophia reached Alessa and Marco reached Dante, both babies turned, looking at each other across the space that separated their parents. Then, as if by silent agreement, they set off again. Sophia toward Dante, Marco toward Alessa, crossing the divide with unsteady steps. Alessa met Dante's gaze over their children's heads, seeing in his eyes the same realization that had settled in her heart. These children, born of a complicated love, were building a bridge between their parents with every wobbly step. I choose this, she said softly. However complicated, however difficult. I choose our family. Dante's smile, rare and genuine, was all the answer she needed. Two years later, the evening sun cast golden light through the windows of Moretti's, illuminating the renovated restaurant in Boston's North End. Weekend diners filled the tables, the buzz of conversation and clinking glasses creating a symphony of contentment. Upstairs, in what had once been Antonio Moretti's apartment, Alessa closed a case file and rubbed her eyes. The law office she'd established focused exclusively on helping victims of organized crime, providing legal support, safe housing, new identities when necessary. The work was challenging but fulfilling, a way to honor both her father's final wishes and her own interrupted dreams. The door opened, and Dante entered with the twins in tow, now 3 years old and bubbling with energy after their day at the park. Mama! Sophia called, breaking free to rush into Alessa's arms. We saw ducks. And dogs, Marco added, climbing onto her lap from the other side. Big ones. Dante watched them with undisguised love. His transformation from feared Mafia heir to legitimate businessman and devoted father still sometimes surprising even to him. He divided his time between managing their portfolio of restaurants and real estate and mentoring young people from backgrounds similar to his own, offering alternatives to the path he'd once walked. Successful day? He asked, noticing the closed files on her desk. Very. The Petrov case is finally closed. His victims will receive compensation from his seized assets. She smiled. Your testimony was crucial. Small restitution for the damage he caused. Dante's hand unconsciously moved to his chest, where scars from Sophia's bullet remained. As the twins chattered about their adventures, Alessa caught Dante's gaze, a silent communication passing between them. Later, when the children were asleep in their beds in the apartment they'd created above the restaurant, she would tell him about the doctor's confirmation that morning. Their family would be expanding again in 7 months. Their wedding rings caught the light as they gathered the twins for dinner downstairs in the private dining room. The restaurant that had once been a front for money laundering now served as the heart of their legitimate enterprises and the symbol of their transformed legacy. Sophia remained in federal custody, her empire dismantled, her power broken. She would never again threaten their family. The Russians had retreated to their own territory, the corrupt FBI agents had been prosecuted, and the Castellano organization had been restructured under Marco's leadership, still powerful but increasingly legitimate. As they settled at their table, Dante reached for Alessa's hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a gesture that had become familiar and cherished. Happy? He asked softly. Alessa looked at their children, at the man who had risked everything to protect them, at the life they'd built from the ashes of their family's violent history. Yes, she answered truthfully. Happier than I ever thought possible. Their beginning had been orchestrated by Antonio Moretti's final gambit, but what they'd built since then was entirely their own creation. A family legacy redefined through love rather than blood or power, proving that even the most dangerous beginnings could lead to the most beautiful endings. Hello again, my beautiful souls, what a journey we've been on together. Alessa and Dante's story reminds us that our past doesn't have to dictate our future, and that sometimes the most unexpected love can be the most transformative. I'd love to know which part of their story resonated with you most. Was it Alessa's fierce protection of her children, Dante's journey toward redemption, or perhaps the shocking revelation about their connected pasts? Drop a comment below and let me know. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who appreciates that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come after the most painful endings. I'll be back next week with another story that will capture your heart. Until then, remember that love is always worth fighting for, no matter how complicated it might be.